See here. So welcome everyone. My name is Iris Martinez. I am the Director of College and Career Services here at Christopher Columbus. I am very, very excited to be with you all tonight and bring you this event virtually for the first time ever at Christopher Columbus. We have our case study. This is an insight into the admission committee, right? In the admissions committee, we want to make sure that you're aware of how it works, the different things that the admission committee looks at and considers, the various institutional priorities, both the soft and hard factors, right? Qualitative and quantitative factors. It's not just numbers. We understand that our students are more than that. And today's sessions, the goal of today's session is to ensure that we give you an inside look and a peek at how admission works. And to do that, I am very honored to have with us tonight Mr. Brandon Mack from Rice University, Associate Director. He brings a wealth of expertise and knowledge. And Brandon, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. We're very excited to have you. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Ms. Martinez. It's an honor to be here. And good evening, Christopher Columbus. My name is Brandon Mack. Once again, pronouns he, him, his. I'm an Associate Director of Admission and very proud alum of Rice University, located in the beautiful city of Houston, Texas. I've been in the field of college admission for 12 years, so that's a lot of applications and a lot of essays. And so what we're going to do tonight is give you the opportunity to be college admission officers and get an insight into how we do this wonderful process that is college admissions. So this is a part of our application advice series that we offer at Rice University. So you do have the opportunity to take part of that. It is a 3-part series where we guide you through the admission process. You then get to talk to 2 admission officers during part 2 to look at what do we look for in your application. And then this part, which is our case study. So once again, you heard a little bit about me, so let's get right into it. So one thing that I will ask you to do is to use the chat function in order to communicate your thoughts and impressions related to what we're about to do. Reserve the Q&A for actual questions and answers that you want to have us discuss at the end. So once again, the chat function we're going to use for your impressions and for you to give me feedback in terms of what you're seeing, but the Q&A is where you're going to actually put your questions and your answers. All right, great. So to give you a sense of what we do as far as highly selective admissions, this will apply to Rice, Columbia, University of Chicago, Harvard, all the Ivy Leagues, all of your highly selective institutions, but will also apply to some of your public institutions that even do assured admission. They will still have the ability to conduct what is called contextual review. So a contextual review or holistic review, as you may have often heard, is basically looking at the student within the context of their environment and what do they have access to. So when we do a holistic process, it isn't a numbers game. It isn't highest GPA, highest SAT, ACT score, highest class rank wins. It is going to be a combination of all of your factors that will drive our decision making. So when we evaluate a student within the context of where they're coming from, their particular high school, what do they have access to, and in a sense, what is it that they're going to bring to the table? But we don't just simply say the student with the highest GPA, the student with the highest SAT score automatically will get admitted into a college or university, which is why it's important for students that you make sure that you put time and attention into every single element of the application, because it's all going to be important in making the ultimate admission decision, and it's not going to be solely based off of one factor. And so hopefully tonight through this case study, you're going to see how all these different parts of the application speak to the decisions that are made. So for tonight and the overview of our case study that we're about to engage in, you're going to be the admission officers for the admission committee. We were going to make a decision based off of these applicants, with 2 students being admitted, 1 being waitlisted, and 1 student being denied. There are going to be three sections, academic factors, experience, and perspective that we're going to look into. And at the end of each section, we're going to ask the committee to make a decision. And so during this, I will ask you to vote for the student you would want to admit at the end of each section. And then at the end, we'll determine which student is denied. The remaining student will be the student who will be placed on the wait list. So the university that you're going to be evaluating for is a university called Lovett University. So usually when we do case study events like this, and also in general for all colleges and universities, there's something called the university profile. The university profile is where you get the information related to that particular college or university in terms of their college and majors, any new programs that they have, the kind of admission statistics in terms of the middle 50% of that particular college or university. And then there's something also special called institutional priorities. Now, institutional priorities are going to be information that you as the general public generally do not have access to. This will be the things that that particular college and university has needs of. So that could be a new program in which, of course, they're going to need students to populate that new program. Their particular values. So that means that that's going to be the type of students that they're going to be looking for who exhibit those values based off of what's in the application. It could also be that they have particular priorities related to enrollment and particular populations that they want to make sure, but there's never a quota system with respect to that. But once again, it is something that they value. So institutional priorities, once again, help drive decisions, but they don't necessarily mean that there's a make it or break it in terms of that decision making. So for example, for this particular school, for Lovett University, we're going to assume that all the students who are applying are within the middle 50% of the standardized testing. So therefore, they're all within that range of being academically competitive based off of standardized test scores. In terms of institutional priorities, Lovett University is a university that has a very large residential component. So they want individuals to contribute to the residential life and the student life of the campus. So they're going to be seeking students who are demonstrating that they're going to be contributors to an environment. Campus values, one of the things that they value is community. So because of that, they really want people who are going to be good community members. And in terms of new programs, Lovett University has a new business program. So they're going to be looking for students who are interested in business and can contribute to that new program. But one thing I want to emphasize is that Lovett University is not Rice University. So we're not thinking about who we're admitting to Rice. We're thinking of who are we admitting specifically to Lovett University. So I want to see that there's a message in the chat. So someone is saying, this is being recorded. I would like a copy sent to me, please. Yes, this will be recorded. So you will have access to this recording. And thank you so much for making mention of that. So moving on. Here is the biographical information related to our 4 wonderful students that we're going to be making decisions on. All the students come from different backgrounds. They all have different family backgrounds, different academic areas of interest. And so we want to take this information into consideration when we make our evaluation. So we're going to go through each of them just so you have a sense of their particular backgrounds. So Bella is a African-American female student from Houston, Texas. She is of U.S. citizenship. She has a dad who has a bachelor's degree and a mom who has her high school diploma. The dad works as a chemical plant manager and the mom works as a homemaker, and she's interested in going into chemical engineering. Mateo is a Hispanic Latino male who lives in New York City, New York. He is a U.S. citizen with a mom who is a lawyer and a dad who is a doctor, and he's interested in going into business. Chris is a trans male who uses he, him pronouns from Los Angeles, California, who is Asian and is a permanent resident. Both parents have masters, but both parents are also currently unemployed. And Chris is interested in anthropology. And then we have Susie, who is a white female from Valentine, Nebraska, who both parents have high school diplomas and both parents are farmers. And she's interested in going into environmental science. So this is just overall biographical information that helps us to understand those particular students' context and where they're coming from. So the first section that we're going to get into is the academic factors. When we look at academic factors, the things that we take into consideration is what are you studying and how well have you performed within the context of what it is that you're interested in studying. So for example, if you're someone who's interested in going into, let's say, a natural science or engineering subject, then of course I'm going to look to see how are you performing in math and science, because that's going to be indicative of are you going to be an academically strong student in that particular subject. But of course, I'm going to look at all of your grades, especially all the grades related to your core academic subjects. So that would be English, social studies, math, science, foreign languages. But of course, we'll take into consideration other courses outside of that that might be related to what you're interested in studying. So don't worry about PE. I personally don't care how well you perform in PE unless you happen to be going into athletics. But outside of that, not a big fan necessarily of looking into PE, but the point is that we're looking to see how well you're performing and within the context of what you're wanting to study. But also we look to see, are you challenging yourself to the best of your ability what is offered within your school? So some schools, honors classes is the highest level that they have available. Some schools offer AP, some schools offer IB, but one thing remember, we don't compare schools. We look at you within the context of what is offered within your school, because as we know, not everything is universally offered, but we want to see if an AP program is offered, are you taking advantage of it? If an IB program is offered, are you taking advantage of that? We look at your GPA, but we're also going to look at how well you perform in individual subjects. And then your test scores can also be an indicator in academic factors. But once again, we're looking at all of these different factors. So the way that this works is that you're going to see a transcript for each of the students. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to look at the transcript, and then I'm going to want some of your impressions, and feel free to put that into the chat. So first we will start off with Bella. So just to give you a sense, Bella goes to Houston High School, which is a public high school. Remember that she's interested in going into chemical engineering. She has a 1370 on the SAT with a 680 in evidence-based writing and a 690 in math. Her overall GPA is about a 3.7. And as you can see at her school that they offer 16 AP classes. So just gonna give it a couple more minutes, and then in the chat, tell me, what do you immediately think about how well Bella is performing? Okay, Lawrence points out that math and science grades are not her strongest. Good eye in terms of she is an A-B student, but where we're seeing the lower grades tend to be in the math and science classes, because as you notice, she's been pretty consistent in making B's across her math over the course of her years, as well as a B in AP physics in her first semester of her 12th grade. Enrique points out that she is taking challenging classes. Great. Students taking pre-cal and AP Calc in 12th. Only took APs in 12th, okay. I wouldn't say necessarily that they're lower grade, that Bs are low grades, it's just lower grades within context, remember. Does someone notice, is she taking a full load in her 11th grade year? Is there something missing in 11th grade? Someone pointed out, thank you, Jorge, for pointing out that she did well in AP chemistry, but thank you, Marcos. In 11th grade, there's no science. So that could be something that would come to mind for someone who is thinking about, oh, they're wanting to go into chemical engineering. Are they really going to be prepared for science if they did not take a science in 11th grade? But she does make up for it with the fact that she did take AP physics, and at least she is performing, with at least a B grade in AP physics. But overall, I think y'all are picking up on the correct things in that she is relatively challenging herself, but there may be a couple of challenges that are missing, but also performing well relatively overall. And thank you also for pointing out that her math score being higher than her evidence-based writing score can also show that science and math may be where her strong suit lies. All right, so next we're going to go to Mateo. So just a little bit once again about Mateo. Mateo goes to University Prep, which is a private school in New York City, New York. He's interested in business. He has a 36 composite ACT with the subscores being there and the GPA being a 4.5 out of 4. So the school offers 21 AP courses, and one additional note is that the organic chemistry class is the highest class offered, and it requires a special invitation to enroll. So what are some of the overall impressions that you get from Mateo? Thank you, Mate. Excellent grades and rigorous courses and definitely challenging themselves. Really strong academically. 11th grade looks strong. He's a genius. We could say that based off of the grade performance. Someone who immediately wants to go accepted. Great. Outstanding student. All right. Is this challenge even or is it on one side or the other? Someone did point out that it is a small school. Yes. Strong ACT, good performance all around. Right? Invited to be able to take invited to take a class, which is good. No business related classes. Okay. That could be for a variety of reasons, right? It could be because maybe business classes are offered and he didn't take advantage of that, or that they're not offered. But we are seeing that someone is taking the traditional academic load that we want to see. So yeah, y'all bring up a good point in terms of our business classes offered. That's the reason for why your school profile is so important in our process. And your school does an amazing job of providing that information to us for us to know what is offered within the school. The main thing that this school is providing to us is that they do provide the 21 APs and that they are related to the core academic subjects. So within the core, he's doing very, very well, and he's definitely challenging himself. The evidence of that is that he has numerous APs throughout his entire high school career. The fact that he's doing the organic chemistry class. Though none of the students, oh, by the way, someone just pointed out there's no classes in the second semester. It's because at this particular point, we don't have those grades yet. So they are taking classes. It's just that we don't have those yet. Because generally you have to remember, when y'all apply to school, we're going to pretty much have grades up until the first semester of your senior year. Generally, we'll get your second semester senior year grades after you've been admitted to the university. And that brings up a good point. You want to maintain your grades during your second semester of your senior year, because we're going to admit you based off of how you perform, and we don't want to see a significant dip in your grades during that second semester. So do keep that in mind. Oh, great question. Someone asked me the question, do we consider a B in an AP class better than a B in an honors class? The correct answer is it's best to make an A in an AP class. We're selfish. Let's just be honest. What I mean by that is we don't usually, in our job, we generally don't do those kind of things where we say it's better to do one than the other. We're looking for how well did you perform and how well and in the class, and we want both the rigor and the grade. So keep that in mind. All right, so next we're going to go to Chris. So take a moment to look at Chris. So Chris is going to Sample High School in Los Angeles, California. He wants to go into anthropology. There's about 322 students in the senior class, 1430 in the SAT with a 740 in evidence-based writing and a 690 in math. So what are y'all seeing with respect to Chris? Remember, at this particular point, we're focusing on academics, and use the chat for your impressions in terms of the what we're seeing here. For the questions you may have, put those in the Q&A. Okay, someone did point out that Chris does have a C, and that there's maybe a little bit of weakness in the history grades. So notice that in 10th grade, we do see the A in European history, and then that second semester, we do see a C. Would you say that Chris is on an upward or downward trend in terms of his grades? That's true. There is an upward trend, and upward trends are good because we want to see, are you improving? Because there may be some reasons for why those lower grades are occurring when they're occurring. Lots of language classes. Is language classes good, especially with what he wants to study, since he wants to go into anthropology? Exactly. So that would be something else to take into consideration is, are you performing well with respect to what it is that you want to study? But I think y'all point out in something is that we are seeing some lower grades, especially with that C in a subject that's related to what he wants to study, but at least there is an upward trend and a good solid SAT score. All right, so then we're going to go to our last applicant, Susie. And definitely the challenge in themselves. So with Susie goes to Valentine High School. It is a small school with the 23 students in the senior class. They're interested in environmental science, and they have a 32 ACT composite with a 3.67 GPA. What are some of the things that you notice about Susie? I'll ask this first question. Is Susie challenging herself? Once again, an upward trend. But would you say Susie is challenging herself? Now, wait a minute. I notice many of y'all are pointing out that she doesn't have any APs. Is it available to her though? Keep that in mind. It's not possible at her school because the school doesn't offer APs. The highest curriculum that they offer are honors classes. Did she take advantage of the honors classes that were offered? Yep, exactly. And then she even extended herself by taking a Calculus 2 class at a local community college. So that's the thing that is the important thing here. When you're doing contextual review, as we do as admission officers, we don't do that comparison between schools because not everything is universally offered. Within the context of the school that she's coming from, Susie is definitely challenging herself because there are no APs, but yet she is taking advantage of the classes that are available and she's performing well, even to the point of extending herself by taking something at a community college because that is what is available. So remember, it isn't a comparison game. It's based off of what is available to you within the school that you're coming from. So is she doing good? Is she doing well in classes related to what she's wanting to do? Right? She did well in her earth science class, which can be a great sign in terms of what she wants to go into in terms of environmental science. So that's the thing to keep in mind. All of this is about context and how context plays into it, because it would be very differently if there were AP classes that were available and she didn't take advantage of that, rather than being in a setting where there are no AP classes that are available. All right, so I'm going to give you an overview of our four students. So we have Bella, Mateo, Chris, and Susie, and this is their summary. What I want y'all to do, usually when I do this, there's a polling feature, but because I don't have control of Zoom, we're not going to be able to do the traditional polling feature, which is fine. This still works the same way. What I want y'all to do is to put into the chat, who at this point would you advocate to admit? And I'm going to give y'all a minute. Yeah, thank you. Who are the two students? Yeah, who are the two students, thank you, that you would advocate for to admit? So we have Mateo and Susie for some. Seeing a lot of Mateo and Chris, Mateo and Bella. Mateo and Chris, Mateo and Susie. So definitely seeing a lot of love for Mateo, great. Some for Susie, all right. So seeming based off of this, it would be probably fair to say that Mateo is definitely the student that the committee would definitely admit, and that between Susie and Chris would probably be where y'all would be, who would be your second admit and who would be your wait list. And at this particular point, Bella would be the student who would be the deny. All right, I want you all to keep this in mind. This is all based off of just the academics. But now we're going to add another point to this, which is experience. So experience is where we're going to talk about your activities, your awards, your family responsibilities, the things that you do both in and out of the classroom, and the experiences that you'll bring to a college or university. When it comes to activities, what I'm looking for is just that. What is it that you do in and out of the classroom? Are you doing things related to what you want to study? Are you doing different things because you have an interest in it? Have you achieved in those particular activities and engagements? But do you have family responsibilities? Because if you have family responsibilities, that's going to take away the time and ability that you have to be able to do extracurriculars. So for those of you who have younger brothers and sisters, make sure that you put that into your application to know and let us know that you're taking care of them, because taking care of them is going to take away some of your time to be able to do other things. But also, if you have a job, if you have internships, those are going to be experiences that you'll have that can be connected to what you want to study, but also could be because you're supporting your family's finances through having a job. But those job experiences are also what you're going to bring to a college or university. So when we look at extracurriculars, we're really just looking to see, are you an involved person within that particular community and space? But also, what do you have access to? Because you may be in an area where you don't have access to a robust number of activities. So then what are you engaging in with respect to what you have access to? So first, let's start off with Bella. Oops, sorry. So I'm gonna take a moment to look at Bella. Remember, Bella is interested in chemical engineering, and remember that we did see a few lower grades, primarily in math and science at the beginning, but also that we did see kind of an upward trend in terms of her grades and things of that nature. But now we see her activities. What are some of the things you're noticing in her activities? Good job, Lauren, pointing out that she does have leadership experience. Science and math present, which is good to go along with what she wants to study. Her Gold Award project, which could also be connected to what it is that she wants to study. You're seeing both science and academic related. Gold Award is impressive, yes. Right. You're seeing someone who's kind of focusing on her goal. So we're seeing someone who's demonstrating activities and engagements that are really focused on that chemical engineering. So you can point to her success in science fair. You can point to her being a leader in chemistry club. You can point to being a president in math club, but then also doing robotics. So all these different things are showing that even outside the classroom, she's doing things and achieving in things that can demonstrate that she'll be successful in chemical engineering. All right, so let's go to our friend Mateo. So remember that Mateo had the very impressive academic record. Remember that Mateo also goes to a private school in New York City, and this is what he's involved in. What's your impressions based off of what Mateo is involved in? Right? Being involved in the stock market is good in terms of being involved in business, right? Well-rounded with sports and does a lot of solo activities, right? So in doing a lot of solo activities for an institution that involves people being contributors, is that going to be good? Right. That's going to be something to take into consideration. If you're an institution that really wants people to be super involved and not necessarily solo, it's something that may read that way, right? Nothing to do necessarily with team members, right? So maybe that also transmits certain things as well. Being interested in art, a little bit different, right? So that's the reason for why all these different things speak to different potential elements of yourself within an application. Also, has he been involved in a lot of things all 4 years? Right. It seems like some of these things only developed recently. And that could be for a lot of reasons. I mean, let's think about it. We were all going through COVID, right? So maybe it was in the midst of COVID that he picked up the music. It may be in the midst of COVID that he picked up photography. So that could be part of it. Or he has good grades because he has good grades because he's spending most of his time studying rather than being involved. Also something good to point out. Exactly. All these things can be used to make the argument for why you should or shouldn't be admitted. But once again, That's the reason for why you want to provide as much information as possible, because you help us come up with the argument. All right, let's look at Chris. So remember, Chris is interested in anthropology, had some lower grade performance early in high school, but mostly in STEM, but an upward trend in grades since the second semester of 11th grade. What do we see about Chris? A lot going on, right? Published, yes, very involved. Do we see involvements that align with the anthropology interest? Yeah, we do. Also mentioning that they work. We see research. Do we see anything that is unusual activities, right? What do you consider to be unusual? Comedy, yep, stand-up comedy. So showing a different side of themselves. We also see a law interest. So we see a lot of different things, but they do align to that anthropology interest, but also showing someone who writes a lot. And you definitely have to write a lot when it comes to anthropology. We do see some leadership skills. We do see some achievement. So we see a lot of things in a very kind of, as you mentioned, a student who is involved in a variety of different things and also has a part-time job as well. Now for Susie. So remember, Susie wants to go into environmental science, had limited course offerings because remember, there were only 2 honors classes that were available. What do we see about her? Things that are related to her interests, a lot of farm involvement, helping to take care of the family. So would her family responsibilities, right, someone just pointed it out, her family responsibilities would take up a lot of time, so maybe she doesn't have the ability to be able to do as much in terms of extracurriculars because she has so much time that she's using to help her family out. Is she achieving? Falling into the tradition of being a farmer, you could make that argument. Exactly. Extracurriculars could also be limited because of the environment that she's in. But she is still doing STEM, right? So with Susie, I think we're seeing a student who is doing what she can within the environment that she's in. So she's helping out the family, but still trying to be as involved as possible. And she's also achieving because we're seeing some achievements in Future Farmers. She was a regional medalist in swim team until she had to stop because of the family farm. So once again, has potential, exactly. So all these things can be used to make the argument for admission. So now you have the information related to both academics and now we have experience. So based off of this, who are the 2 students you would vote to admit? All right, so we have Mateo and Susie, Chris and Mateo, Mateo and Susie, Susie and Chris for sure now. First choice is Chris and Susie, all right. Bella and Mateo. So still, it seems like Chris and Susie are kind of moving up. Bella seems to be kind of staying in place, and Mateo's kind of gone down a little bit to that waitlist kind of positioning. But still, some of y'all are some diehards for Mateo. Great. So yeah, so for some of y'all, I want to take a moment for a moment. For some of y'all where y'all's opinions shifted, why did it shift? More information, right? The extracurricular activities, right? The balance, see more facets, exactly. So that's the reason for why these decisions are never made only in isolation, because they all feed into each other. And it can definitely change your mind. So someone just brought up different perspectives right on time, because now we're going to talk about perspective. So when it comes to perspective, every single one of us has a different perspective. And it's about how do you transmit that perspective to that particular college and university. And one of the many ways that you do that is through essays, but also through your letters of recommendation. So when we look at essays, your essays give us a sense of who you are and what perspective you're going to bring to that particular college or university. It's also where you get to tell us why are you interested in that particular institution? Because of course, we're selfish. We want people who generally and genuinely want to come to our schools. So how you demonstrate that interest is not just by showing up at events and things of that nature. It's about what did you put in that application to really show and demonstrate that you want to go to that school. So we look at why love it. We'll look at essays. We'll look at any additional information because that additional information that you provide to us can maybe explain some of the other elements that we see within your application. We'll definitely take into consideration letters of recommendation, and maybe there are special circumstances. So let's get into that. So what you're going to see for this is going to be a summary of the essays and the letters of recommendation for each of the students. So take a moment to look at Bella. So to the left of the screen, you'll see, remember, the academic information and the information related to what she was interested in, what she did in terms of her experience, and now her essays. Do we learn anything new in her essays that maybe explain some of the other things that we've seen in her application? Dyscalculia. For those who may not know, dyscalculia is a learning difference that does impact the ability to be able to do math. So maybe that could be the reason for why we saw some lower grades in her math and science classes until the learning difference was caught. And that could also maybe explain why that science class was missing. Someone brings up excellent recommendations. So we had some questions about her ability to do math and science. This clears it up in terms of a chemistry teacher speaking to her strength in that subject and that she has a love and ability to be able to do that subject. Wanting to do research on professors that love it. Exactly. So we're seeing that that interest is clearly there. Any other things? So yeah, I think the things that y'all pointed out exactly are the things that help with respect to Bella for us understanding that maybe the reason for why her grades were the way that they were was because of her her learning difference. The fact that she is still having some good support in terms of a teacher and the school vouching that this learning difference has been caught and that therefore she's received the assistance to be able to do well, and that also her achievements demonstrate that she can do very well in science and math based off of her leadership and also based off of her achievements with that. But also, I would say that her essay also shows that love of robotics and that interest in robotics as well. All right, for Mateo. First question I'll ask you for Mateo. Did we learn anything new about Mateo? Right, we didn't really learn anything new. This is why I tell students that an essay is your opportunity to put in that new information, right? This is what I would call a missed opportunity because in his personal essay, Mateo could have given us a different side of himself or maybe go in even deeper into his interests and why he wants to go into that. Your letters of recommendation, they say something about you, where we have clearly someone pointing out that the teacher's saying that they're not a leader on campus. So does this suggest someone who's going to be a contributor to the environment? But we do see that the interest in business is clearly being stated. So yeah, those essays and that perspective, this is your opportunity to bring in that additional extra. And unfortunately, I don't think we're being able to see that through at least the way Mateo has demonstrated that through the essays and through the letters of recommendation. Right? You can't necessarily rest solely on one or the other, right? That's why you want to make sure, like I said, to put that time and attention into every single element of the application. So let's go to Chris. Did we learn something new from Chris that maybe explains some of the other parts of the application? We have some hardships, yeah. So maybe that's the reason for why the 9th and 10th grade looked the way that it did. Kind of hard to focus on grades when you're dodging wildfires. Anything else that we learned? Based off of this, do you think that they would be good in anthropology? Also might be why you got into comedy. Exactly, good point. Sometimes you have to find the funny in hardship. Ability to step up challenges, exactly. Resiliency, being the sole contributor, character, all these things come out of your essays, and you give us that information based off of what you write. So I definitely agree with some of the things that y'all picked up, is that we're seeing someone who has dealt with some challenges. We see the genesis exactly of why he was interested in anthropology. We see the character that's being demonstrated, but we're also seeing people who are speaking to the fact that he's doing something to contribute to his family, and that maybe those hardships explain those grades. So that's why, once again, it's never done in isolation. You help us to provide the context of understanding other aspects of your application. Finally, with Susie. Do we learn anything from Susie that may explain some of the other aspects of the application? Right, the first one ever to take that calculus class. So we're seeing great letters of recommendation, exactly. Someone who's pushing the academic envelope within their school. So we're seeing someone who is willing to challenge themselves, right? 45 minutes to go to school, exactly. So maybe it's a little harder for her to be able to do extracurriculars when you're going from 45 minutes from one school to the other. Hey, I've been in Miami traffic, I understand. Right, she's stepping up to challenges as well. Are we also seeing maybe that there's a connection to why she would go into environmental science? And would her perspective be different than what maybe other students could bring to environmental science? Right, someone who's bringing that farming connection and observing climate change is going to be a very different voice and a very different perspective that's in that classroom. So the life experiences, things of that nature that you're bringing, exactly, those life experiences, the academic challenge, the push, all those things that are being demonstrated in perspective can be additive to the environment. All right, my friends, so here's what we're gonna do. So for this particular section, because you've now gone through all three sections, we're gonna make our final decision as to who we're going to admit. So who are the 2 students you would like to admit? Oh, we'll save the other decision in just a minute. So we have Bella and Susie, Mateo and Chris. Chris and Susie, Susie and Bella, Susie and Mateo. Some for Chris and Bella. Okay, so it's seeming for many of y'all, Chris and Susie are kind of the ones. Now, I'm going to ask you just for one name. Who would you deny? This is impossible. Welcome to my life, lords. So we have, okay. So some for Mateo, some for poor Bella. Someone wants to deny Susie, okay. Yeah, these are not the easiest decisions to make, but they are decisions that you have to make. And you guys provide us with the evidence and the information that helps us to determine these decisions. But yeah, the key thing is that it's not all one factor that determines. It's going to be the combination of all these factors that help you determine the decision. So probably based off of just what I've seen from within the chat, we would more than likely probably admit Chris and Susie. Mateo would probably either be, Bella or Mateo would probably be the waitlist or the deny. All right. So at this particular point, first I want to ask in the chat, was this helpful? Good. Glad it was helpful. Glad it was helpful. Because what I'm hoping that this was to give you a sense of it's not just one thing, it's the combination of everything. So what you can do when you're applying is to make sure you're giving me that, and all of us admission officers, that fullest context, because it is about the big picture. So at this particular point, because we got some minutes left, I want to make sure that we get those questions and answers. Okay. Someone had asked, of course, everyone always asks, who would I have selected? So for me, the biggest thing that would be my issue with Mateo is I would have wanted Mateo to have done way more in terms of his essays. For me, the essays they're not the most important part, but it's the part that you have the most control over. Think about it. Your grades are pretty much done at this particular point, with the exception of your senior year. Your letters of recommendation is what someone else says about you. Your essays are what you say about yourself. So it's the thing that you have the most control over. It really shows me, are you taking this seriously? Are you, when you write that why Rice, right? Why Columbia, that particular why statement, this is your chance of really showing me that you've done the research about that particular school and you demonstrated what connects to you about that school. When you write your essays, it's also a way for me to get to learn who you are and what's important to you. And so that's the reason for why the essays are so important, because it's all about your control. And that's the thing that was lacking for me for Mateo. So for me, Mateo, while having really great grades and things of that nature, it was such a missed opportunity where I'm seeing other students working hard for that opportunity that he probably would be on the lower end for me. And then, like many of you, between Chris, Susie, and Bella, I could easily make a case for admit on the remaining three, just because I'm seeing different elements of themselves where they're taking advantage of the opportunities that are present for them, that they're not that they're demonstrating that they are overcoming the particular situations, but also they're showing why they would be strong in any other things that they're interested in studying. So those at least would be some of my impressions. So I'm going to handle some of these Q's and A's that we have in here. First, we'll go with, yes, but can only pick one. Trust me, I do this all day, every day. I've been doing this for 12 years. So yeah, if I had to pick one, I could do it. I'm not going to do it tonight. I'm going to exercise my prerogative not to. So to go with first Ms. Jeanette's question. So if students don't take AP classes in the school that offers them, does it disqualify them from admission consideration? It doesn't disqualify them from admission consideration, but it is going to be, perfectly honest, it is going to be something that's going to make the student a little less competitive unless there's a reason. So once again, that's the reason why the context is so important, and that can come through either the additional information section. A student can send us information, because also some schools limit how many APs you can do. So that also could be taken into consideration, because I definitely have some schools where they may have a full AP a full AP roster, but the school says you can only do 1 or 2 each year. So in which case it would make sense why they have a smaller AP load. So once again, all those contexts will come into that. With students with a learning disability, like Bella, for example, have a harder time getting into college since it may affect their grades and SAT and ACT scores. They're not going to have a harder time because, once again, that information can be used in context to explain why you have a lower SAT or ACT score. Because you have to remember, for especially private and highly selective schools, because we don't have automatic admission based off of standardized testing, we can take that contextual information into making our decisions. So I wouldn't say that they would have a harder time. Do admission officers have different priorities in how they evaluate an application? We don't have different priorities. I mean, the thing is that we all have institutional priorities that kind of govern some of our decisions, but not all of them. So once again, it's going to depend every single year. So that's why I tell students is that you shouldn't necessarily go based off of the statistics or decisions of a previous year, because every single year is different, because every year is different in terms of the class, in terms of the needs of the university. Is it too late to get more involved? Nope, it never is. Here's the key thing. When it comes to getting involved, get involved in the things that you actually want to get involved in. Don't do it because you think it's going to look good on your college application, because trust me, it doesn't work that way. The way that we'll see your involvements based off of how you describe it. So if you're doing it just for the sake of doing it, it's going to come across based off of how you describe. So does it serve a student to go to a school might have a less challenging curriculum? Once again, there's a lot of circumstances related to that, because it depends on what's going to be available to you, right? So keep that in mind. Are students still sending in videos with their college apps? Some are. It's not required for every single school. Most schools, that's an additional thing that you can submit if you would like to. The key thing is to ask that school if they consider you sending videos or not. How heavy does the SAT weigh? Let me tell you something. The SAT and the ACT is who you are for one Saturday out of your life. There you go. It's just one additional piece of information. With many more schools going test optional, it's just that one additional, but that additional information doesn't necessarily mean it's going to help or even hurt. It's just that one additional piece of information. I got to have all the information to really understand you and to really make the admission decision. Is class rank a consideration for admission? It is, but it's not required. Not every single school does class rank. So if your school doesn't rank, then we don't consider it. Is the notion that colleges only admit a certain amount of kids from each high school true? Nope. We don't limit how many students we admit from a particular school. It's all about what are each and every one of you bring. So yeah, we don't limit how many we take. I just kind of caught this. Does the school look at a social media post? It can. It can. I don't have time personally, but we could. What would be some reasons for not taking an AP course? It could be a variety of different reasons. It could be one, not offered. It could be that's not your particular academic interest that you want to go in, but also it could be other circumstances. And in terms of ADHD, we will take that into consideration as well, because that also can have its own way of impacting the ways in which you're able to take in information and be in a particular environment. I want to go into an art school. How would they judge my application? Great question. For students who are generally going into more performance-based subjects, such as like art, architecture, or visual dramatic arts or theater, they're going to generally ask you for a portfolio. So they're going to want to see your creative work. So in that particular sense, you want to make sure that you demonstrate your engagement in creativity, your engagement in art and architect and any of those subjects, and that'll be used in the admission process. So are C's a big problem, or other things mentioned way more? So for a student who makes a C, here's the key thing. What I want to see is if there are reasons behind that low grade, and also did you turn it around? So one of the reasons for why I asked y'all about trends is because trends are very important. Maybe there's a circumstance or reason for why your grades were lower in that particular situation. What I then want to see is, okay, did you improve over time? Because if you improved over time, it could be it was just that one particular instance. But if you're not necessarily improving over time, then maybe that subject is not your strong suit, and that's okay. But it also is going to depend on what is it that you're telling me that you're interested in. So I'll take a couple more questions. Oh, great question. What if your child does not know what they want to major in yet? That's fine. It's always going to depend on the institution, because you have to remember, some institutions you're applying specifically into that major, specifically into that academic school. Some of us, like Rice University, there's more variability where we completely and totally understand. You have something in your mind right now, it may very well change. We're set up to facilitate that change. So for that reason, we just want a sense of what you're interested in, but it doesn't have to be non-committal. So that's the key thing. I like to say that most students are not undecided, they're truly multi-decided. They just have a lot of different things that they want to decide on. We just want to get a sense of what is it that you could possibly think of. So does sports play a big role in being accepted? It's just another extracurricular and a thing that you're involved in. But once again, if you're an athlete and you're wanting to go and play that sport for that particular school, then of course that could have a very different situation, but it's just one additional extracurricular. Truly, and I'm telling you this with 12 years of experience, we do not privilege certain extracurriculars over others. They're all equal, but it's all about what are you bringing to the table. How is a parent's educational background considered? So the way that it is considered is because we consider it if you are a first generation student, because if you're a first generation college student, then that means navigating the college admission process is going to be very different than coming from a family that has more of a college going background. And once again, that could be a context that can help explain other different aspects of your application. You can also be a first generation American college student, in which case your parents did get educated outside the United States, and we understand that the college admission process is very different outside the US. So therefore, it would be a very different process for you and your family, given the fact that you don't necessarily have that same familiarity. I know I asked a lot of questions, and I thank you all for it. I apologize that we did run out of time, but I did want to point to be able to sign off and give you my contact information. So just to wrap up this wonderful session, because I do want to honor your time, remember, context matters. What I mean by that is that every single piece of information that you provide us in this process is going to be used to make the case for you for admission. So the way that you can best leverage yourself in this process, be as detailed as possible. Every single opportunity, talk about yourself, your interests, what you specifically are going to bring to that particular college or university, because it's all going to be important in making the ultimate admission decision. I hope this has been very, very helpful. I'm going to give you all my wonderful email address. In case y'all ever have any questions, you can always contact me directly. Thank you so much. Hope this was helpful, and I'll turn it back over to Ms. Martinez.
Brandon, this was great. Thank you so much. I'm glad that our families stayed and they were very engaged. Love.
Yes, y'all were, and I love it.
Yes, and the questions. Thank you so much for your time, for your knowledge, and sharing it with our families at Christopher Columbus. Families, don't worry. Mr. Matt has agreed. We will be sharing this recording with everyone. So no worries. I know some of you emailed me because they had internet connectivity issues, but don't worry, we will share this out. Again, I hope you guys enjoyed this and found this very helpful. I wish everyone a great night. Brandon, thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you all so much. Take care. And once again, last thing I'll leave y'all with, if you want a college or university, go for it. Don't limit yourself. The only way you'll ever know if any college or university is an option for you, you got to apply. So dream big, put forth that best application, and give yourself that opportunity. Thank you all so much. Have a good night.
Bye, everyone.